Hey folks, this is Jim Horn with Travers Talks, and today we've got a special guest. We've got John DeSpelder from Travers Indivisible, and we're going to talk about the recent candidate endorsements, the election results, and what they're looking forward to for the November election. So let's get with it.
Well, John, welcome to the show. I was going to say the only podcast in Traverse City, but I'm not sure of that. It's good to have you. It's good to have you.
Thank you, John.
Sure. It really is. It's been a tough primary, I think, for everybody. I think, getting through it, some of the acrimonious accusations, not on the Travers Indivisible side, I might say. You guys are pretty professional when you speak out and so forth, and you lay out your position pretty well. And I think that's really a credit to, how you operate. I certainly didn't see any vilification on Facebook or anything else. And I think that's good because that's going to make it for a healthy transition. But what I want to do is talk a little bit about the endorsement. And the reason I do is because this was an historical event for you guys. I mean, as long as I've known Travers Indivisible, you guys have never, endorsed on a contested primary. And so why did you guys feel it was different this year? What was the thing that made it so different?
Well, first of all, thanks, Jim, for reaching out and for asking to have this conversation. I really appreciate that. And I admire the work that you do. It's really, it's a way to get local information out to local people. And I think that's crucial. In terms of the endorsement process, I think it makes most sense to start at the surveying the landscape process. And the listeners may or may not be aware, but Travers Indivisible networks with all the other indivisible groups in the first district. There are 25. Maybe about half of that are completely active groups. And we proposed that we have a Meet the Candidates forum series. And the philosophy behind that was that most people in primaries, in midterm elections, don't even understand that there are primaries. If they do understand, they know next to nothing about the candidates. And so it was part of our mission with education to put this primary series together because we really felt that it was important for all the candidates, and we did offer invitations to all of the candidates. We felt it was important because the public needed to understand, and we felt by doing so, the public would have a much better understanding going into the general election after the primaries were complete. And so what we were able to do is to hold, and we being the first district Indivisibles, we held 11 Meet the Candidate forums around the first district, which goes all the way from just north of Bay City all the way to the extreme western UP in Ironwood. And the 11 Meet the Candidate forums were pretty well spread around that whole area. And the thing that we wanted to do was have everybody have something available to them locally where they could not only listen to, but they could ask questions and really have an interactive dialogue with the candidates. So we have 4 candidates. Callie Barr and Jack Bergman did not agree to participate, and I make no judgment about that. That's certainly their calls. But what we did have is we had 2 Democratic candidates, an independent and a Republican. They each attended all 11 together. And one of the things that I think struck everyone in each of those 11 areas where they were held was how thoughtful, how respectful, and how responsive the candidates were. And we felt that if there was nothing else, I think it was a big success, both in terms of learning more about the candidates and about educating people about the candidates they will face decisions about on the ballot. And along the way, it was a real example of how to have a dialogue that's respectful and responsive and disagree and do it with the kind of amicability and candor that we experience with these candidates.
Do you even had Justin Michael on, and I know you had encouraged me. We had a coffee together and have a few of, we had Callie on, we had Kyle on, and then we opened it up to the other three candidates, Stiles and Zebulon, and the Justin Michael, the Republican candidate. There was some, and I guess you can best answer this, maybe you did a little bit before. There was some thought within the Democratic community that because Callie didn't show up, has scheduling issues, that might have had to, or that might have prejudiced your decision. That's what the talk on the street was.
Yeah, and we chose not to engage. We would respond to direct questions, but we didn't put out any defensive campaign or anything like that. We just didn't feel it would be appropriate to do that. No, I think while we were disappointed, we weighed a number of factors. And one of the factors we didn't weigh was whether or not they showed up to the forums. Now, of course, we were limited in the sense that maybe we didn't have as much dialogue or interaction with the candidates that didn't participate, but we were looking at a number of different issues. And I'll go into that, like I said, in a little bit.
Okay. In your endorsement letter, and I don't want to misquote you on here, so you tell me if I am, you openly embrace those values that could win here. And in your own language, you said the analytical side of me wasn't sure they were politically viable. In other words, I'm assuming that meant the other candidates other than Kyle. Is that correct? And that was part of your decision-making process, wasn't it?
By that statement, what I meant was I have tended in the past to more or less personally endorse or support whoever the Democratic nominee is, or the person who seems to have the most chance of winning. What was different about this time for me, and I'm only speaking personally, I'm not going to speak for any of the other people on the steering committee, but personally, I was looking at the national perspective. I was looking at things that have been going on. Bernie Sanders is sort of seen as the father of the more progressive democratic socialist movement. But then people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came in, and the things that we were watching with Sanders, AOC, and then with mob dining in New York City is that we were seeing a way that these people who are more progressive than the Democratic center were addressing the real issues that are of most concern to people. Economics, the power of big money in government, a loss of sense of control, anxiety about healthcare, you name it. They were addressing those much more directly. And we felt, much more fully engaged with the electorate than what we'd seen in previous years. And also, we noticed with, for instance, AOC and Mamdani, that they were learning how to parse their language, how to approach the issues that they felt most strongly about in a way that was respectful, not polarizing, and had a good chance of bringing unity. And that was the perspective that we took when we were looking at the candidates in the first district.
Was the steering committee's vote unanimous, or did you have I don't care about the people on it, but was it a unanimous vote, or did you have some dissension, or like, most committees do that are volunteer, just out of curiosity?
Well, I think that in the end, we all agreed to the endorsement. I want to say that I think there were concerns, and I was one of those that expressed those concerns about endorsing somebody more in the progressive lane. I respect Callie. I think she's run a great campaign in the past, and this campaign shows great promise. But I do think that in the end, we all felt that after we had a chance to listen to everybody, we had a chance to look at the national landscape, and we had a chance to review all of that and look at our alignment with our values, that we felt that Kyle was the best choice.
Okay. Kyle won one county, his home county of Dickinson. He lost the other 34. So what does that tell you about the committee's read on electability? Although I will say, and this is a strange thing, when I looked at Abdul's numbers in Grand Traverse County, he blew it away. Now, I know Stevens wasn't up here. She was up here once, but he blew it away. And then obviously Kyle struggled in Grand Traverse County. So, what is your idea? What's the read on electability, from the committee's, perspective now? Or what would you say?
Well, first thing I want to say is electability was one of our considerations. It wasn't a sole consideration. Alignment with our values was primary. Also, the ability to reach out and educate the public about more progressive politics. And I will not say that it was unanimous, but I would say prevalent among the steering committee was a healthy skepticism about the Democratic Party, its structure, both at the state and at the national levels. And, I started out, I think, before we started recording, saying to you that we are all, I think, in sync with Democratic values. But when it comes to the Democratic Party, I think that most of us on the steering committee, if not all, really look at the Democratic Party as a big organization that gets its funding largely from big corporations and has made decisions and has taken actions that we don't feel are in the best interests of the people of the country, the state, or the district. And I know we all try to strike a balance, but it seems, particularly starting with Citizens United, but it's been going on a long time, there is a healthy dislike of big money in politics, and that extends not just to the Republican Party, but to both of the major parties.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on that. I think Elon Musk is now donating $100 million. I think that was the number in the November election. That should not be. I want to play you. You didn't realize that you were going to be on the podcast with Hillary Clinton.
No, I didn't.
No, he didn't. I have a clip from Kara Swisher, who is a known podcaster, columnist. You may have heard of Kara. And she had Hillary on her podcast just recently, YouTube video. But I'm going to play that for you because I think it falls into the next question on what what TI has been talking about, and that's Traverse Indivisible for a postmortem. Here's Kara first, and then Hillary.
I'm not asking for advice, but what should Democrats do about this sort of, and the right is really taking advantage of this, it's the progressive left, communists. Those are powerful words.
Yeah.
How do you, to me, you just say, we have a lot of people. We have a lot of different people in different states. What's very different from Mickey Sherrill, very different from Amy Klobuchar, very different from, that kind of thing, or Gretchen Whitmer even.
We do have a broad cross-section of people, what they believe, what their experiences are. I think that's an advantage, but we also have to win general elections. And so how we pivot and get behind the candidate in Michigan so that we can beat, the Republican candidate, Mike Rogers, that's going to require a lot of outreach and a lot of willingness on the part of the winning candidate and his supporters to know that they need the people that they were vilifying online, in person. And, one thing that we haven't yet seen enough of is that when the progressives, the left, whatever we want to call, candidates on that side of the Democratic Party, when they lose, they often don't support the candidate that has been nominated. There was a lot of reluctance to support Kamala Harris. There was a lot of reluctance to support me when I got the nomination. So it can't be a one-way street.
So there you have it. I think that's a good thought process there that Hillary gives. And so that would lead me into the next question, John. Are you guys doing any kind of internal post-mortem on this thing? In other words, what are you going to do going forward with, the Barr campaign? Obviously, when I've looked at your Facebook posting, you guys are all behind Abdul. In other words, the people who are doing the Facebook postings, I don't know if that, I don't want to lump everybody into one group. So what is your thought? What is TI's postmortem on this thing going forward? How do you support Kelly? How do you support Kate Gallup? You got Betsy. You've got a whole bunch of people. What are your thoughts?
Well, you just named quite a range of political candidates, and with radically different positions and tactics and how they approach politics in general. So we're in the process of doing that post-mortem. We will be having, hopefully, some final discussions sometime in the next week where we will be able to make decisions. So I can't really speak for Travers Indivisible, and I certainly will not speak even for myself on this because we have not made decisions yet. But I do think that, first of all, electability is, like I said, that's something that's important, but it's not the only consideration. One of the things that we've seen is that the candidacies of I think, Kyle Blomquist and Abdul El-Sayed, as I think they have influenced the approach that other candidates that have been competing with them have taken. And I think that's an important aspect of what's going on in this dialogue. And remember, it really is, I think, a time where nationally and at the state level, the Democratic Party is going through their own self-analysis and their own self-reflection. What's been missing in the past is that's the only way that they've done it, is looking at it themselves, and it's never really produced any differences. I mean, honestly, the differences that have come out of it have not been tangible enough to make a real difference. I think what's happening this time is because of the success of people like AOC, Mamdani, at least Abdul winning the nomination, I think it's changed the dialogue, and I think that's changed for the better. So going forward, I can't really characterize what the decision is going to be. All that I can say is that we are going to be doing it. I did want to mention, though, one thing about your points about the results for Abdul and Kyle, and I think a really good observation. Abdul showed up everywhere. He showed up in the UP. He showed up in indigenous tribe meetings. He met with indigenous Native American groups, one-on-one, small groups. He went all over. He met with pretty much anybody that would meet with him. And I think that is really the kind of thing that helps build a different way. Because right now, I think that the center of the Democratic Party thinks they just need more money. If they get more money, they can have more staff, they can do all these things. The approach of candidates like Kyle and actually all of these people, Abdul too, is much more grassroots, one-on-one based. And I wanted to add, we had a discussion with the candidates, actually I had dinner with the candidates after the forum in Traverse City. And there were people that were a small number of people that were supporters of all of the different candidates were in the room too. Very informal discussion. I don't want to name names or characterize anything too much, but I do want to say that it was pretty clear that there were common uniting issues, much of it having to do with a mistrust of big organizations, with a mistrust of the influence of big money, and a real concern for common people, and actually even some willingness to think about a public option, Medicare for all, however you want to characterize it. When you get kind of the political heavyweights out of the room, when you get sort of the big money out of the room, you can start to address the real concerns that real people have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just listened to Bernie Sanders on TV, and the problem we have right now is the big money is not out. And if Callie is going to, let's say, or anybody, or Abdul, they're going to need big money, and they're not going to need somebody's $1,000 donation. They're going to need millions, and that's unfortunate. Should never be that way. But Citizens United obviously, gave us that problem, and it's an unfortunate problem. And the candidates I've listened to, whether it's been Kyle or Callie or so forth, Wayne, wanted to get big money out of the politics. It's whether or not there's 535 members of Congress, if one or two of them can actually persuade the other 400 or whatever, 532 or 33 to do it. I certainly appreciate your position. And so when do you think you guys are going to come out and discuss what you want to do? A couple more weeks and you guys will do some Facebook postings and so forth. You might want to come back on the program, John, and talk about, going forward and so forth for Traverse Indivisible. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think there will be something coming out probably within 2 weeks, maybe a little bit less than that. One thing I want to point out about National Indivisible, which is really one of our touchstones, and their philosophy, and I think we're pretty much in sync with that philosophy. And one of the big touchstones is have your debates, have your, division, have your discussions. Once there's been a decision made at the primaries, back to candidate. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to keep in mind. I am very saddened what you said about the money that people will be needing to win. I think it is a truth, although I would point to some exceptions. Mamdani is one, and I don't recall the Supreme Court candidate in Wisconsin, but you may remember that Elon Musk pumped millions, orders of magnitude higher than what that other winning candidate had, and that candidate won.
Yeah, he pumped about $10 million into the Supreme Court.
So there is a secret sauce, and I think it's a matter of taking a look at how do you best campaign, how do you best make support. One of the things that I think all of us will be doing, and that includes Traverse Indivisible and all the indivisibles around the district, we're going to be working on building relationships. We're going to be working on building a base. 2028 is, the importance of 2028 is not lost on us.
Yeah,
and we are.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it seemed, you're right. Abdul won. He was outspent 10 times to Haley Stevens. He's an unusual candidate. He's very compelling. Mamdani is the same way. They're unusual candidates. And they did a great job. And obviously they addressed issues that the voters really cared about. I think one of the things that has to happen this year or during the November election is the people that sat on their hands don't sit on their hands. The progressives that Hillary talked about, they get out and vote, because if they don't, it's going to be, the Republicans that obviously get elected again, because they're going to use the big money. There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah. Turnout in this midterm is going to be essential. It can't be done without everybody turning it out, especially in this district. And I have every reason to think that it will be good. I will not speak for, I don't regard myself as necessarily a progressive, although I support a lot of progressive points and causes. But I see some of the same concerns I have some of the same concerns that you do. And I think the real trick is going to be to get everybody motivated to turn out in November.
Yeah, I think so. Well, John, it's been great to have you on the podcast. It's been very enlightening. It sort of explains the Travers Indivisible position from the endorsement on, and what you guys are going to do going forward. Hopefully, I can have you back on again, you or Leaf. I certainly would appreciate you guys coming back on and talking about, your thoughts and, what you want to do before November. And we're going to be out at some of those rallies that you guys have, working on Instagram and getting some of the points across from some of the people that are holding the placards. Anyway, John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Good talking to you, as always.